Good day, and welcome to another podcast of Two Mics with Two Mics. We have a special guest who's going to introduce the podcast today, but before he does that, I am Pastor Mike, and I have a microphone.
I'm still Pastor Michael, and I still have a microphone. And our special guest is President Joe Biden.
She knows so long as she was denied, our freedom can never be secured.
One more time.
She knows so long as she was denied, our freedom can never be secured.
If we do that anymore, I'm going to start petitioning that we vote that kid in for president.
So we're not going to do that, though. I'm not going to say something or you say something and the other one.
I'll just bring my kid up, put him to the mic, and see what he does. There we go. Oh, goodness. Well, welcome. Yes, that is a hilarious little meme. As one of our crew here was saying, it's probably the wrong time for Joe Biden to be president because it's the era of memes and videos and things of that nature, which makes it real easy to make stuff like that. But today, we're going to start off with this strange thing called the Bible. And we're going to branch off from there.
That could be offensive.
It could be, but we'll find out. Let's start it off. Proverbs 14, 15, and 16.
Wait, 3 chapters?
Sorry. Through, Dr. Literal. Through. 15 through 16. Proverbs 14, 15 through 16.
So Proverbs 14, the chapter.
Hold on.
In verse 15 and 16.
Proverbs 14, 15-16.
There you go.
There we go. This from the Amplified. You jerk. You're all a bunch of jerks.
But a jerk you love.
Yeah, there you go. The naive or inexperienced person is easily misled and believes every word he hears. But the prudent man is discreet and astute and considers well where he's going. A wise man suspects danger and cautiously avoids evil, but the fool is arrogant and careless. Now, why do we bring this up? Oh, pastor, my pastor. What is this revolving around?
Well, as you may have heard, it's an election year.
Oh, goodness.
It's an election year. And we have 2 candidates. Well, actually 3.
2 humans.
3 human beings to choose from, which, to be quite frank with you, none of them are, none of the 3. I mean, it's more of this person is less appealing than this one. It's not really that any of them shine.
It's a who's who of human crap. That'll make people love us.
That could be a good way to put it.
But it is an election year, and we know what happens in election years. Mm-hmm. In the past several years, we've seen a lot of different things happen. But the reason we bring up the proverb is because we saw that play out perfectly in 2020.
And how do you mean?
Well, 2020 was an election year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure some stuff happened. So that's what I mean. So why don't you tell us about that stuff?
That stuff?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of stuff.
Tell us about that stuff.
A lot of stuff happened in 2020. As you know, it was the year of COVID.
Yes, the year of COVID.
It was the year of lockdowns. It was the year of government overreach. It was the year of Antifa and Black Lives Matter organization. Right, because obviously Black lives do matter. And you know, but they wanted to accentuate that because of injustices, and rightfully so. There were
some
injustices.
morons in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, because it wasn't you that who told me the other day that the Indians.
Oh no, I'm going to go into that later.
Okay. So obviously we are against injustice. We are against prejudice. We're against racism, which is not in the Bible. Jesus took it to the heart of the matter, and he didn't just say race. In fact, he never said racism. He said, if you hate your brother, you are in your heart a murderer.
So in 2020, you named several things just now. Mm-hmm. How do we see that affect the church? let's start off with the first big one, the biggest one, the COVID. And I'm not talking about the virus. I'm talking about everything that surrounded the virus.
Right.
How did you see it affect the church?
I saw it affect the church in several different ways. One way is I saw so-called Christians freak out over a virus that had a 99.9% survival rate. Was that the percentage? Do you remember? Or is
I think it's 99. Yeah,
99.8 to 9%
let's just go
survival
let's just
rate.
Say it's 99.
Okay.
Let's just be nice.
A 99% survival rate. We saw fear come upon Christians.
So is that why you say so-called?
So-called what?
Christians. Is that why you say so-called?
Well, that's one reason. I believe there were true Christians, though, that a spirit of fear came upon them. I mean, people would mask up when it was proven, even in 2020, that cloth mask could no more keep out the COVID virus.
It was like they wrote it on the box.
Then they even put it on the box.
It's like cigarettes.
And I love the analogy of it. It's like putting up a chain link fence around your yard, believing that it will keep mosquitoes out.
So how did that affect? Let's go to our church.
That affected our church in several ways. Number one,
because you said vaccine and masks. So let's hit
vaccine
those.
and masks. You had people that believed that all of us leaders, pastors and elders, and anyone leading a home group and anyone leading a ministry at the church, that we should all wear masks to show people that we love them and we care about them, even though the masks were ridiculous.
And
that was divisive.
Yeah, the only time that we ever wear masks is when we're fighting crime anonymously.
Well,
only time.
We can't give away our identity.
It's true. It's true.
But anyway, so
Bible
let's get
man.
off of that. And of course, another way it was somewhat divisive was the vaccine, which now, well, not just now, but over the past few years, can you believe it's been 4 years since COVID?
I can, because a lot of stuff has happened.
But now, of course, major truth is coming out that the vaccine was a farce, that there were more people dying from the vaccine than those who didn't have the vaccine.
Now, here's the interesting thing, right?
Okay.
This is going right back to that proverb. It's coming out now on Capitol Hill. So somehow Capitol Hill makes it more official than when it came out in 2020. People were not believing that it was a farce. People were not believing that it was a lie. People were not believing, doing their own research, looking it up, not panicking. They believed everything that was coming at them. A lot of people. And here's the sad thing, like you said, a lot of Christians were moving in fear, operating in fear. Mm-hmm. But now that it's on Capitol Hill and Fauci is standing on, he's standing trial, so to speak. I don't think it's trial. What is it called? He's
definitely under
he's on the witness stand. We'll say that. He's on the witness stand right now. And he's having to give testimony. He's having to give answers. Now it's official to all these people who didn't believe before. And there's actually still more people who actually ignore what he's saying, go with what he still said, what he first said in 2020. They're ignoring what he's saying now. They're actually believing, still moving in fear, that the fear actually dictates the truth, as opposed to it actually coming from the horse's mouth. Hey, actually, this didn't work. Yeah. The 6 feet social distancing was a farce. All that stuff.
And I like this. I like this meme about Joe Biden. Said, I fired thousands of servicemen in the military for not taking the shot, while letting millions of unvaccinated illegals enter our country. Remember this on Election Day. And that's exactly true. I mean, were employees of healthcare workers who were let go because they wouldn't take the jab that are now suing and winning lawsuits.
Yep.
There's also some chancellor or some important fella in Germany that gave an official detailed report. You can find it on the YouTube about what a farce the vaccine was and the lockdowns.
But the sad thing is that now people will listen. In the midst of fear and panic, people don't listen. They're misled. They're not being astute. They're just going with what's the loudest voice as opposed to let me listen to all the different voices, then ask the Holy Ghost, hey, where's the truth in this? Because somewhere in all these different voices is the truth. And you know the truth, Holy Ghost, so reveal it to me like you said in your word, that you would do that. Guide me in all truth.
And even President Trump got swept up in the deception.
So we'll get into that in a minute, but like you mentioned a big one, which is a trigger word for a lot of people.
BLM.
BLM. Talking about BLM, and I said this before, I'm going to use the analogy. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Use it.
BLM, the words Black Lives Matter, you cannot disagree with that.
No, it's genius.
You cannot. It is. It's a genius move because it's basically like saying don't stab puppies. No one will disagree with not stabbing puppies. But if you're giving to an organization that says don't stab puppies, you're like, yes, take my money. Puppies must not die. And then you find out pretty much all of the money you've been given is actually going to the CEO, the CFO, and all the staff at the top of the organization, Don't Stab Puppies. You might be a little upset that most of your money did not go to the prevention of the stabbing of puppies.
Correct.
That's what Black Lives Matter organization has an issue with, and it's actually come out in the past 4 years that the heads of that organization have had multi-million-dollar homes.
Oh, yeah.
Who have purchased acres and acres and of land and possessions, cars, all these things where they've misused the money given to the organization. And it's kind of like, if we're going to do a comparison, it's kind of like Planned Parenthood. Yep. Planned Parenthood.
That's another genius title.
It's another genius title. Planned Parenthood. And if you don't know about the history of Planned Parenthood, look up Margaret Sanger. But Planned Parenthood, it gives you the idea like I'm planning on how to be a parent, and that is very agreeable. Yeah, be a good steward. Yeah. Plan how to be a parent. But then when you look into what they do, you realize, oh, this isn't about planning parenthood. This is about ending the possibility of parenthood. And that's the same thing with Black Lives Matter. You'd think that there's a lot more going into that organization that actually puts Black lives first, and it doesn't. It puts certain Black lives first. The
Correct.
staff at the top. And so that's where we're talking about BLM, but there was such a divide over George Floyd in 2020,
right.
And it caused such a riotous, ridiculous, because it caused such a visceral response in so many people thinking that social justice is so vital and that somehow there's something severely wrong in this country at its core. No, there's something wrong in people. But how did this affect the church, Pastor?
Before we do that, I want to say Margaret Sanger established Planned Parenthood specifically for the elimination of black babies.
And she is burning in hell.
She's burning in hell
Guaranteed.
right now because she died in her sins.
Yep. But how did the whole thing? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Black Lives Matter, when they first came out, the organization on their webpage, they in September 2020 they scrubbed part of their webpage that said.
And they were around before 2020.
Right.
We
the
all
group
know that.
whose co-founder, Patricia, probably butcher her last name, Cullors, has described herself and fellow co-founder Alicia Garza as trained Marxists. And they removed a page titled What We Believe that included its public policy positions as well as describing itself as part of the global black family. And they were against the nuclear family. I mean, that's just one of the things that they were against. And so people would, we in our church, we put up the Black Lives Matter webpage that included their initial statements and what they believe.
Now, why'd you do that?
That so people can be educated, so people can be aware, so what you read in Proverbs could happen to them. They won't be naive. So they, because like you said, Black Lives Matter, that phrase was genius because it does matter. They
Satan
do
disguises
matter.
himself as an angel of light.
But then to go behind all that and say you're a trained Marxist and all of that,
And for those who don't know what that is, look up Karl Marx.
look up Karl Marx.
It's communism at its finest. And the thing is that when you actually go into the nuclear family and the benefits that come with a two-parent household, it's astronomical as opposed to, let's say, a single father, but more often than not, a single mother who's dependent on government policies, government handouts, government programs that are supporting mom and children. Where mom says, I don't need this guy, or the guy's gone because the guy's a piece of dust. But that was encouraged in their manifesto. That was encouraged in their What We Believe page. And that actually is detrimental to the cause that they preach.
Right.
Detrimental.
But one reason it caused problems, not just in our church, but in churches, because if you dare say you're against Black Lives Matter organization, some people will hear you're against the term Black Lives Matter. We had a man in our church, a black man. This is what he told me after service one day when I talked about what God calls essential. And in that sermon, I said, Black Lives Matter organization is not essential. But what he heard and what he confronted me with, and because you were there.
And that essential, real quick, it was when President Trump at the time was talking about businesses that were essential versus businesses that weren't, and how churches were essential according to our governor at the time, Pete Ricketts, and so on and so forth. So the word essential was coming out on the TV screen on multiple news avenues.
A whole word.
Yeah, it was a whole word, and that's why you preached what was essential, talking about the church being essential because it does this, and so on and so forth. Go ahead.
It saves lives. It doesn't destroy lives.
So
it promotes the love of God. It doesn't promote division and racism or hatred. And so I said, Black Lives Matter organization, not essential. Well, this person heard and came and told me afterward, I'm done with this church because you said from the pulpit that I, as a black man, I'm not essential. I said, I did not say that. Oh, yes, you did. I heard you. I know what I heard. I said, well, you may have heard something, but you didn't hear it from me. I would never say that. I would never say that a black man, a Indian man, a Mexican man, a Jewish man, that you're not essential. Are you kidding me? I've been, preached for decades, but he swore that's what he heard. I said, you didn't hear that from me. And you were there. You heard the whole conversation.
I was, and it was a heartbreaking conversation because, and if somehow this gets back to him, fine. It was heartbreaking because it was very clear that there was getting swept up in the rhetoric of the whole racial divide in this country. And part of that is because I know that man, and you know that man, because of his skin color, has had hateful idiots affect his life negatively.
Yeah.
But that is exactly what the whole rhetoric was drawing out of people of different color. Was what have you experienced from one or two people or from a whole group of people, depending where you live? I mean, there's people from Mississippi all over Nebraska that have talked about idiot racists all over the place in where their hometown was. But it draws upon an injustice done to you, an emotional response, and then says, okay, what you've been through, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And you got to find it. You got to find it where at the core, our country doesn't have those things. At the core, our country doesn't have racist laws. We did at one time.
But we have racist people.
We have hateful people.
Hateful.
They're all over the
people.
place. Hateful people. It doesn't matter. It could be about color. It could be about the size of your nose. It could be about the look of your beard. It could be about what you're wearing. It doesn't matter. Yeah, your beard specifically. But it broke my heart because it just became such a divisive. Basically, it seemed to me based on the conversation, that if a dear brother in the faith was pulled in by worldly rhetoric and started to believe the stuff that was being pumped out on the internet, on the TV, on the news, all that stuff.
You know, let's take the KKK. All white people, you know, with hatred,
Yep.
with seeking to divide, be divisive, and they do. I don't agree with it. I would rebuke them. I would not throw in with them just because, well, they're white, you know, and some of their things make sense.
So that was one way that we saw the church get affected. We did see, actually, there were several families of color. I'll use the politically correct term. Families of color that were affected. And then there were some, one who's actually our leader, she was never pulled into it.
Never.
Because she was astute. She knew what it was, and she had actually been discriminated against on several levels because she's actually half Asian and half black.
Right.
And but she is smart enough, going back to Proverbs, to not be misled by it, to not buy into it, and that was evident. That was evident. She was very focused on the mission that the Lord has put,
And she still is.
and she still is. Praise God. What were you going to say?
Well, no, let's get off of that because your question was
then the
what
other
happened
one.
in year 2020.
Okay, so then here's another one. You ready?
Yep.
What happened in 2020 regarding Democrats and Republicans, and how did you see that affect the church?
Oh, boy.
Come on.
Yeah, that's a good one. Because there was a priest who came out in 2020, a priest named James Altman,
A good one.
a good priest. I mean, I've told people if I knew nothing of Christianity and I had come across this priest as a young man, I'd be Catholic.
There's a few Catholics I really want to convert because I just love them.
Yeah.
Like they're like
Like Harrison Butker,
There you go.
like James Altman.
And a local Max Chapman. There you go.
Max Chapman.
Max
I'm
Chapman.
not familiar with Max.
I call him Max Catholic. He's
Okay.
he's the Christian Catholic missionary that I met.
Okay.
I like him a lot. Go on.
But so James Altman came out with a video that he made for the Catholic Church. And in that video, which was like less than 10 minutes, he made this statement: you cannot be Catholic and be Democrat. He didn't say you can't be Catholic and vote Democrat. He said you cannot be Catholic and be Democrat. And then he brought up, like we did, the Democratic platform from their own website, what they believe. And of course, the Catholic Church is 100% against abortion, 100% pro-life. In fact, they have led the pro-life, I don't know what
That's
you call
one
it.
thing I commend them on.
Pro-life battle
Yeah.
in the United States,
Yeah.
you know, forever and a day.
Even more so than Christians.
Yeah,
in a
even
lot of
more
ways.
so than Christians.
Protestants. We'll call them Protestants,
Yes.
for their sake.
And so we showed part of that, remember? We
Yep.
showed part of Priest James Altman's statement. That was one of the things we showed. Well, of course, we have people, I won't use the term my son uses, but people who were rump hurt.
Just say it. Rump roast.
People who were
Ham's hurt.
hurt because, believe it or not,
Hold on. Butt hurt.
but hurt. Because believe it or not, in the church, you have people who claim they're Christians that vote Democrat.
And here's the thing: a lot of them, they vote Democrat because the Democratic platform, though that was the platform, by the way, of slavery in the Civil War, though that was the platform of the KKK,
Yes.
though that was the platform,
But they
of
don't wanna hear
most
that.
racist- well, it doesn't matter because they positioned it to where it is the platform of compassion. That the Democrats are compassionate, that they care, that they have these programs, that they're all for inner cities. They've positioned it in such a manner where the empathetic side that they're pushing, the rhetoric of empathy that they're pushing through the Democratic platform, that appeals to Christians who don't look beyond the empathetic vocabulary that they're throwing out there. And so what happened with our with some of the people in our church.
Well, they left.
Well, they left.
They got offended and they left because, by golly, they're Democrat and they're going to stay Democrat, and it doesn't matter the facts. It doesn't matter what the own Democratic Party website says. They're Democrat. They were raised Democrat. I'm talking all races. I mean, we know white.
And we're not talking about just young bucks either.
No,
we're talking about people
in
their 70s, 80s. Yeah.
And I know I can hear you saying, well, Pastor Mike, the Republican Party, they're not much better. I agree with that.
They're not.
They're not much better.
They're a little better.
They're a little bit, yeah, but they're not much. They're not much,
much
and they're
better.
fast proving themselves.
It's heads and tails.
Yeah. What's one of our favorite preachers, Shuttlesworth, say? 2 heads on the same snake, of the same snake.
There you go.
And that's exactly right. So, maybe you want to go register yourself as independent.
I'm actually, I said this, we voted recently, and this guy looks at me, and I had like an American flag shirt on or something, I don't know. And he goes, oh, you're registered as libertarian? I said, yeah. And he goes, why are you registered as libertarian? And I'm like, well, my vote's safer. No one's going to go rummaging through my vote to change my vote if they want to do something with the ballots. If I'm libertarian, they leave those guys alone. So I have to write in every single person every time I go vote.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Don't write me in.
It's all right.
Okay.
I vote the Bible, so.
Because I write some friends of mine in when I don't like the choices there.
But I have to write in everyone every
He's never
time.
held an office.
It's quite annoying. But anyway.
Yeah, so maybe you want to register independent. Because you know what? You have, thank God, still, so far in this country, we still have some rights.
Yeah.
Right?
And we actually we know a minister who won't even vote because nobody aligns with the Bible well enough. He will not vote.
Yeah, so he's going to maybe do a write-in of
somebody that
has
that no one knows.
No chance of winning. But yeah, what 3 candidates? What is it? Is it which Kennedy? What's the first name? It's not Robert, is it? Come on, help me out. Is it Robert Kennedy's running?
Yeah.
Donald Trump's running. And Joe, I don't know where I'm at, Biden is running.
Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to pull it back up.
Pull it back up. And of those 3, it's just, they all suck.
He knows so long as he was denied, our freedom can never be secured.
It just makes me miss my kid a little bit, even though he can't say that.
Well, he'll get to that point. So, obviously you're going to vote for whoever you want to vote for because that's your constitutional right. But I would lean towards someone who best represents the freedoms for the unborn, the freedoms for the church, the freedom, let's just get into this. We got the LGBTQA plus and WXYZ people. Organization
Big
and the
one.
people, wanting special rights. Like I said, I have a great witnessing tool that I may use sometime, and that's to take our big 10-foot cross and on one side hang a Nazi flag, and on the other side hang the
take me though.
LGBTQA
You can't get away with that.
plus.
You can't get away with that anymore.
And say, what do these 2 have in common?
And we've done that.
And
we've done that.
Well, we've done that with other flags involved. I mean, just those 2. And tell people, what do these 2 organizations, what do they have in common? You'd be surprised what they have in common. And then the next question is, what did Jesus do for both of these organizations, the people in these organizations? And of course, he shed his precious blood for them so they don't have to remain a Nazi, so they don't have to remain gender confused, so they can find the purpose in life that Jesus Christ procured for them in his death, burial, resurrection, and ascension.
And the thing is that with any of these organizations, there's people that don't agree with the organizations who would actually identify themselves as somebody. Like there are people that I know that say, yes, Black Lives Matter, but I don't agree with the organization. There are people that we heard of who are part of the community of homosexuality, just all around, okay,
right.
LGBTQA+. They're part of the community, meaning that they practice that sin. However, They don't agree that there should be minor attracted persons added to that. They don't agree with pedophilia at all. In fact, they're ragefully against it.
Why did you say minor attracted persons?
Because that's what it's called as opposed to pedophilia.
That's what they want to change.
That's what they're trying to bring it into. And that community says, no, keep them out. So they've actually voted against that on several occasions. They
have some morals somewhere.
But that's the whole thing is the organization itself doesn't necessarily always represent the people.
Right.
I mean, that's just how it works. But anyway.
Let me say this on camera just so you're not confused. Black lives matter. LGBTQA plus lives matter. They matter to Jesus. They matter to us.
And the thing is, the reason why we're talking about this, covering it on 2020, and I'm going to take the helm in a second here, but is because to even talk about these topics, I remember I preached on George Floyd. I went through with my youth because they were seeing riots in the streets, they were seeing videos, they were seeing Antifa, they were seeing all these things, and I had to describe, okay, here's what the Lord says, and here's the facts about George Floyd. Here's the facts about police brutality. Here's the facts about police tactics and how they're trained. I went through all that. And I lost people because of that, because there was youth that were just caught up in it. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that as Christians, we should be able to discuss these things in church, have them confronted, have ourselves confronted
in
with
a mature way.
What do I believe? What am I being handed? What do I believe? And what does the Bible say? And am I believing truth? But the minute that you put it right in front of someone's face, hey, you believe this about your candidate. You believe this about this organization. You believe this about global health. You believe this about your own health. You believe this about God's healing. Once you put it in someone's face, the difference between a mature Christian and immature Christian is the ones who go, I will look at it and I'll discuss it with you and I'll remain calm. The immature Christian is a slave to their emotions. Mm-hmm. The immature Christian hasn't really instituted self-control into their repertoire, so to speak, into the fruits of the Spirit in their life. And so they can't, they run away from this stuff. And that's where we did see division. Now, we did see a giant influx of people come in because they said... For a time. Well, some remained.
Some did.
Some remained because they heard the word of truth being preached that comes from the word of God.
Right.
But a lot of people came in. Some came in for the wrong reasons because there were similarities between what we were saying and their political stance and the rhetoric that they believed, because it swings the other way too.
Can I interject here?
Interject.
Without saying that.
And my voice is so off because of this thing I've been dealing with. So I'm not going through puberty for the third time. I'm going through... What? My voice is off. I have my Batman/laryngitis voice. Go ahead. Oh, please.
A preacher said, there are 3 types of people every pastor has in their church. And they have people who are for you for what you are against. Okay? But in their eyes, in their estimation, if you ever lower your intensity of what you're against, they will take that as weakness and they will leave your church. Then the second group of people are those who are with you for what you are for. But again, if in their estimation you weaken in that area, you don't champion it like they want you to, they'll leave your church. And then the third group is what you want. There are people who are with you because of who you are. And they've seen you in your victories. They've seen you in your defeats. They've seen you in your successes. They've seen you in your failures, but they recognize that the hand of God is on your life. And those are the people that you want. Instead of this, like you said, driven by their emotion. It reminds me of the and then I'll give it back to you, the Star Trek episode. McCoy, Dr. McCoy, he is like the immature. He is like the immature Christian, and because he's always reacting out of emotion. And then Spock, who's more like the mature Christian, I remember told him one day, "Really, Doctor, you need to learn to govern your emotions. They will be your undoing." Back to you.
Star Trek: The Wisdom.
Yes. Everything I needed to know about life, I learned by watching Star Trek. That's an actual book.
I believe it. I'm going to read this again, and then I'm going to go into this next portion.
Okay, do it.
Which will close us out. Proverbs 14, colon, 15 through 16. The naive or inexperienced person is easily misled and believes every word he hears, but the prudent man is discreet and astute and considers well where he's going. A wise man suspects danger and cautiously avoids evil, but the fool is arrogant and careless. Going back to everything we just talked about, we've seen it in both aspects. Talking about the two sides of the same coin, we saw Republicans just basically bleed red. No. It's all about Christ. It's not about your party. And we saw some Democrats bleed blue. Again, it's not about your party. Is it about your faith? And I actually said this to somebody before I get into this last part. I said this to somebody because they were really battling, and it was a person of color. They were battling the whole thing with the riots, the whole thing with George Floyd. And I said, do you see yourself more as a, here I'm going to say it, ready? Black person? Or do you see yourself more as a citizen of heaven? What's more important to you?
Well, you can say that for white people. You see
can say
yourself
that
more
for
as a white
anybody.
person, or you see yourself more as a
You can say that for
citizen
anybody,
of heaven.
but this person was dealing with the whole racial divide.
Okay.
And I said, which one are you first and foremost? And that was kind of a hard question because they knew the answer immediately was citizen of heaven. But what's the feelings? What's the heart doing? The heart is deceitfully wicked above all else. Who can understand it? So going into where we are now, 2024, election year. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that Christians need to be aware of. They're misled a lot because the empathy that they have and the love of God that was placed in them, Satan knows. He's experienced the love of God at one point. He was cast down to heaven because he's an idiot. But
Because of his pride.
yes, because he's an idiot in the sense of he
Which
challenged
we
God.
have
which,
a whole month of.
Yes, exactly. But point is, he knows that love. And so he knows I can manipulate this love to where it's empathy, to where I can mislead them based on empathy. So Satan does everything he can using the worldly tools that he has at hand, a big one being media, to manipulate Christians into believing fallacies and falsities and all these different things that will lead people away from the actual Great Commission, the gospel that will lead them down a worldly rhetoric, a worldly ideology to get swept up and carried off by a different wind of doctrine, so to speak. I'll say this. Let's just look at a few that could happen this year, because if they pulled that stuff off in 2020, what are they going to try this year? One being immigrants versus citizens.
Right.
That's a serious problem. People, it's not on the forefront of people's minds, the amount of immigrants that are flooding in this country from the South, from all different countries.
Yeah.
It's not just Mexico.
I just saw a headline the other day about the U.S. threat level is been raised again because of the entry of illegal immigrants into the country.
And immediately people think illegal immigrants, well, you're racist against Mexicans. No, it's not just Mexicans.
Oh no, you've got
And no, I'm sorry, but you know what? If somebody over here is doing everything they can to come to this country legally because they love the principles this country is built on, the income mobility, the income mobility that this country has, and they're going through the process, and 15, 20, 30, 100 people jump the fence, then that person gets pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. They're not coming in.
No.
And so that's one thing that can happen is they might try to, obviously, they're trying to get it to where you can vote without an ID card, without a photo ID. And if you're an illegal immigrant and you don't have a photo ID, and then the government says, hey, go ahead and vote. Guess what? Those guys are going to vote whoever's going to let them stay illegal.
We're not idiots.
And go figure. The government certainly treats us like that.
Sure do.
And so the reality is that you might have a immigrant versus citizen war. They might just pump that up. That's one thing that they might do. Another thing they might do, and this one might be a little bit more intricate for some. I always get very cautious when somebody who the platform of their political party believes that killing babies is okay. They start going, Israel, number one. I get really suspicious of that because the minute that people start going pro-Jew who aren't Christian, there is a ulterior motive. The minute that Israel went into war, okay, it started attacking Hamas, and then we saw all these protesters, quote unquote protesters, college protesters, not actors at all, not hired help, real college protesters, being pro-Hamas. And then all of a sudden the government, our government is going, Israel is so important, blah, 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 blah. I get suspicious.
Well, they're backing away from supporting Israel.
They are, but here's the thing. I'm sure it'll come back around again because at first they weren't supporting Israel. At first the government wasn't. Then they went back when they started seeing more protests come about, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're pro-Israel." Now, why is this a problem? Why? How could this be used? How can Satan manipulate this whole situation using the sons and daughters of Satan in our government? Real simple. I don't know how many Jews there are in Nebraska, maybe 6, but there's a lot of Jews in other places.
I know one of them.
Jews, for the most part, the serious ones, the Orthodox, the Hasidic. They're pretty open to discussing things. They're pretty open to that because, it's this weird thing where Judaism and Christianity, they have a lot of the same values. I wonder why. But a lot of Jews will actually say that the Bible is anti-Semitic. And the reason they'll say it's anti-Semitic is because Jews killed Jesus. And so they'll say, oh, Christianity is anti-Jew. So if our government all of a sudden is pro-Jew, what could they say? They could say, oh, you know what's really anti-Semitic is the Bible. We need to start pulling these things out of the Bible because it actually goes against our Israeli brothers and sisters, and we need to be pro-Israel. So we need to get rid of this. And I have one more thing, but go ahead.
No, I'm just aware of our time, that's all.
Hey, you know what? When I talk, it's our time. Right?
When I talk, it's no time.
He gave me the finger, and I don't mean the middle one. He gave me the... Yeah. He loves hearing me talk.
Well, because you said we need to wrap it up.
Well, this is important because...
It's very important.
These are the things that can dupe Christians because a lot of people will be Christians are really pro-Israel. I appreciate that. But at the same time, just like America has laws that are sinful... So does Israel. Israel was like number one in transgender rights.
You're right.
Like ridiculous things.
Right. So we don't support Israel for, the bad. We support Israel because the Bible supports Israel.
In the biblical context, that's why. But these are things that easily can divide our country because then you have Christians versus everyone else. Christians versus the empathetic. Christians versus the compassionate. Because Christians will cling on to the Bible, and others will say, "No, we got to get rid of it because it's so against Jews because Jews didn't kill Jesus." And so the last thing I'm going to bring it back up is the black versus the white because that's a classic card that they play all the time. And one thing I'll bring up is Juneteenth. Juneteenth, if celebrated correctly, can be something nice. There are people who are mature enough to understand. Okay, this is a historic day. This is pretty cool. What is it? It's where the news of black slaves have been freed reached a certain part of Galveston, Texas. And that certain part of Galveston, Texas, all of a sudden these slaves that thought they were still slaves were told, you're free. And so they were freed. That's where you get Juneteenth. That was 1865. And so they were freed. That's what became a federal holiday. Now, one thing that's interesting is Juneteenth is the only federal holiday that has nothing federal about it. All federal holidays have to do with some kind of federal law or federal intervention of some kind. Juneteenth, that was news reaching people in Galveston, Texas, not the law being made where the slaves were freed. That's not celebrated. It's this. Now, why is this important? Because there's a degree of which it plays right into the narrative. Because if you say that Juneteenth is, in fact, the black man's Independence Day, then you have now successfully made 1776, July 4th, the white man's Independence Day. That's theirs. This is ours. Now, what the truth is about Juneteenth is that actually was not the last slave. The Choctaw Indian Nation released their last black slaves in 1866. 1866 is when the last black slaves were released. You can look it up yourself. And here's the other thing. The reason why that's not a big thing is because not only are you bringing Native Americans into it, which somehow that's racist, but you're also saying this does not fit the narrative to divide our country in black and white, to divide our country based on ethnicity. And the other part of this is also there's just a lot of things covered up in history. Anthony Johnson, look up that name. That was the first legal slave owner in the U.S., black. He won in a court of law 2 slaves legally. He was a black slave owner, the first legal slave owner in the U.S. And what's interesting is that at that time, you know, our country was built on morals and values, and it didn't always reflect that over time. We've gotten the Civil Rights Act. We've gotten a lot of different things that have caught up with what the Constitution was supposed to be about. But there were white men that couldn't vote back in the day because they weren't landowners. Anthony Johnson could vote because he was a landowner. There's a lot of things in history.
A landowner with slaves.
A landowner with slaves that could vote. So there's a lot of things in this country that had to catch up to its constitution. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that this whole Juneteenth business and a lot of other things pushed by our government, if Christians don't look behind that and do their research appropriately, they're going to be swept up by the rhetoric. And I don't care what color you are. You know, I don't even like the term social justice. Jesus never said social justice. It was justice.
Never did.
There's just justice. God's justice, biblical justice. Social justice is a construct that has been built over the past several years. And when I say several, I'm going based on God's time, not my time.
Right.
And so it's important to really look this stuff up because I don't know what they're going to throw at us this year. It could be any of those things. And there's a lot more to choose from. I'm just choosing 3 off the top of my
I
head.
think they're trying to throw bird flu at us.
Bird flu. Swine flu. I was around for swine flu, West Nile virus in New York. Those are big. But
yeah, Christians need to they need to do their homework.
And even with the Trump thing, go ahead and hit that real quick. Because it's okay. This could be a 2-parter.
The Trump thing. You want me to look at the Trump thing?
The Trump thing. Because in the same way, like
Christians
we're talking
getting
about,
caught up in politics and rhetoric, forgetting that their candidate ever did any wrong when Trump was in charge of Operation Warp Speed, which was
the vaccine.
Yeah, promoting the vaccine.
Promoting the vaccine. I don't remember ever hearing Trump say, "Hey, I was wrong about the vaccine."
If he did, I didn't hear about it either.
Send it to us if he did. But
and of course, the Supreme Court just overruled the banning of bump stocks, which was promoted and passed under Donald Trump.
Yeah.
President Donald Trump.
It works both ways with rhetoric. Yeah. It works both ways with being misled. And if you think that because some candidate, I'll say it, if you think Trump aligns very well with the righteousness of the Bible, but he falls short in several different ways because he does.
Right. And it's when people begin to promote a candidate above the Word of God.
Yes.
To where you won't even hear anything negative about your candidate because you don't want to hear it. You want to close your ear to it. You want to put your head in the sand because that's your candidate. You know, people want us to wear different things and promoting certain candidates. You know, I believe in promoting certain candidates. I do. I believe politics should be in the church aligned with the Word of God. I don't believe...
and that's how it was for a very long time.
That's how it was. And I believe one reason the country is in the mess it's in is because pastors, religious leaders, shrunk away from promoting politics from their pulpits, from their podiums.
Because they're worried about numbers and they're worried about hurting feelings.
Right.
But the Word of God should infiltrate, penetrate, and change and transform every aspect of your life. That's your vote, your sex life, your wallet, your demeanor, your mouth, everything, your eyes, what goes into your ears. The Word of God should literally ruin your natural life to where you can't see any aspect of your life where Jesus is not in it.
Right. It should govern your life.
Christians, don't be fooled by the rhetoric. Don't be misled by multi-million-dollar media companies that are trying to pump your emotions and get you to have a visceral reaction so you can be manipulated to do what they want. That's really what this is all about.
That's what it's about.
Take us home, brother. Go ahead.
And we're going
You've
to
been
vote.
silent. I gave a lot of facts real quick.
No, your facts are great.
Great facts.
I love it
They're
when
my
you
facts.
have facts to give. Obviously, I didn't have them to give, so I thank you for it. So November 5th is coming up, and that's vote day. And
Remember, the 5th of November.
Oh, yeah.
That's Guy Fawkes. If you didn't know that. France.
so we hope you've enjoyed this. I know there are parts of it maybe you don't care about, but you
No,
need to be informed.
exactly.
You need to be an informed Christian. You need to be an informed citizen. You need to be an informed voter. And you need to not hide behind these fake cardboard walls of social injustice, of racism, of candidacy. No, you need to
Political
see
party,
everything
yeah.
for what it is, and
Look
be
at the book
knowledgeable.
of Acts. Acts 2.
Yeah.
How do we hear them speaking about God in their own language? There's a lot of different people groups that are listed right there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking what?
believe it's
In
18
Acts
of
8,
them.
Philip was talking to an Ethiopian. A Jew talking to an Ethiopian?
All right.
What will the church elders
Or
say?
when Jesus spoke to the Samaritan woman. Yeah, the disciples said, they questioned, but of course they knew better than to ask him. What are
I'm
you doing
telling you,
talking to
if
this
Christians would just see themselves more as a citizen of heaven and exercise the discernment that comes on board with being
Mm-hmm.
transformed, with being a new creation, there's discernment that comes from being a new creation. If they would exercise that, self-control, the fruits of the Spirit, there would be far less Christians duped by the by the verbiage, the rhetoric, the emotional, pumping up of whatever trauma you've been through. There'd be far less Christians getting led astray.
We all have emotional strings that people know how to pull.
I know how to pull his real easy.
Well, he thinks he does. That's because I let him think that.
Let's find out next episode when I pull all the emotional strings.
He can try. So this is Pastor Mike saying thank you for watching. We hope you have enjoyed this podcast. Take us home, brother.
Yes, please like, subscribe, asktwomikes@gmail.com. And if you do have, I'm just kind of curious, if there is an apology video of some kind where Trump backtracked on his vaccine and pushing it with warp speed and just saying, this is the best of all the things I've done. It's never been done before. If you find that, please send it. I'd love to see it because I haven't seen it, and then I'll backtrack on the next episode. I have not seen that. So send that to us as well as a descriptive word, a positive descriptive word we can use on the next episode.
Yeah, not urinating.
What?
Don't send us that word. Hey, welcome to another urinating podcast.
How did you get there?
Well, I can't tell you right now. I'll tell you after we're
I
off
may
the
have
air.
to use the restroom.
No, it has
Tune in
nothing
next
to do
time
with
to find out why I use that word.
too much coffee. Don't forget to share also. We love you. Have a great week.